This week on the PRESSURECAST, the Nintendo Switch gets doomed, the director of The Last of Us leaves Naughty Dog, and Destiny 2 sales break a PlayStation record. It's Monday, September 18th, 2017. Everything happening in the world of video games is here, now, on the PRESSURECAST. Hey, Pressure Pals, welcome to the 199th episode of the PRESSURECAST, the weekly video game news pack that posts every single Monday on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn Radio, Google Play Music, and America's longest running independent newspaper at shepherdexpress.com. If you're looking for the audio or video version of this episode, please check the description of this YouTube video or this description in your podcast app for this episode, and you'll also find all the links to contact the show, so don't be shy, just say hello if you want to. What an exciting show we have for you this week. We have an absolute ton of Nintendo news in the hype train. We're going to be talking about Bruce Straley, the director of Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us, leaving Naughty Dog when we get to the chart park. And then we're going to wrap it up talking about Def Jam Fight for New York and Katamari Damacy in Strong History because they both have anniversaries this week. Among other things, of course, this is a long show if you can't tell already. Just look at the timestamp right there. It's a longer show than we're not just talking about those four subjects would not take up as much time as this episode is taking up. Why is this so hard for you to understand? Just whatever. Okay, let's just move on. We're going to start off this episode of the PRESSURECAST listening to you, dear listener and viewer, in the segment where I ask you a weekly question and you tell me what's what. It's a little something we call Tell Me, Goddammit! So last week I asked you, dear listener and viewer, to tell me, goddammit, what game should become the next great esport. Now, the rules for Tell Me, Goddammit are simple. You don't have to base anything in reality. Just tell me your deepest desire, no matter how unrealistic. See, we get enough reality in the real world, obviously, right? So let's have some fun here. Well, I have to admit, I got two responses, and they were not disappointing at all. These are great responses. We're going to run through them really quick because I think you're going to notice there's a general theme to these two responses. We're going to start off with Joe, who wrote in a devilish suggestion. A devilish suggestion that I need to enunciate. This is a podcast. Okay. Here's what Joe said. New esports idea. It's an endurance test of one's mind, body, and spirit. I'm of course referring to completion, to playthrough, and complete of Superman 64, the quickest without rage quitting or going completely insane. The only food made available to the competitors will be green rock candy or kryptonite. Competitors will also need to remain cool under pressure as they are constantly heckled by Lex Luthor impersonators. Few will enter, many will fail, but only one will be crowned the superest of them all. That is one way to put it, Joe. But let's move over to the next one, because let's see where this theme is going. Sasuke27013 also chimed in with an equally cruel recommendation. Here's what Sasuke said. Would be entertaining to see one of the worst NES games of all time that tormented the angry video game nerd, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, who could beat it the fastest as an esport competition, would add lots of entertaining rage to esports. I was thinking about that. Could we get like a 2-bracket system? You know, one for Dr. Jekyll and one for Mr. Hyde? And that way they have to meet up at the very end, kind of like what they do over at EVO. Seriously though, this is funny. Not only did Sasuke and Joe write in with a similar idea, but I was actually thinking the exact same thing, not when I asked the question, but during the week. See, I was playing Yakuza Kiwami recently, which is a pretty darn good game. I really enjoy Yakuza Kiwami. It's a remake of the very first Yakuza game. But there was this moment where I was fighting this boss, and it was so boring. This guy had so much health, and it wasn't even challenging. It was just tedious. You just had to take all of this time to just quickly dash out of the way and do 3 punches, and dash out of the way and do 3 punches for like 6 minutes. And no joke, I'm playing this, and I'm doing this thing that I do from time to time where I'm having a conversation with my television, where I'm mostly swearing and screaming at it, and I was like, I'd like to see someone speedrun this shit, like, and then I immediately thought, like, whoa, why aren't there competitions for bad games? And obviously, Joe, Sasuke, they had the exact same idea. So let's really think about this for one moment, all right? We've got movies out there that are so bad, people like the MST3K crew add full commentaries making fun of it. We've got music out there that's so atrocious, people actually like to get together and listen to it ironically. It's fun to listen to it. They're like, this is goofy. You know, they get a kick out of it. There's a layer of irony to the whole thing. And, if you think about it, after a while, a lot of these really mistaken works, they turn into lovable oddities. And as Sasuke has mentioned, the angry video game nerd has made an entire career out of mocking bad games. And clearly people want in on the action. I mean, how many angry video game nerd clones are there out there? They're still coming up. Every single year there's a brand new angry video game nerd ripoff. Still, even over a decade later. Think about that. That's crazy. But what if we could elevate the importance of these games from, I would never play that game is so terrible, to, I found a new exploit and I beat it in 15 minutes. Why not take these games and make them important and relevant? It's all part of video game culture after all, and in many ways, the culture, the audience, they create what's the work is themselves. They transform the works into relevancy. So I say, let's get a Sonic R World Circuit going. Let's get a Star Wars Masters of Terrakasi fighting tournament started, and let's see a high score competition for Action 52. Yes, all 52 games. Together, we can make bad games the most important esport in the world. Seriously, why not? I know I would watch it. Well, that's going to have to be it for Tell Me, goddammit! And just so you know, there is no question next week. The mailbox is closed, but I want to thank everyone for writing in. And of course, for telling me, goddammit! Now, we still have to talk about all the brand new game announcements this week in the Hype Train, and we've got the monthly NPDs, the best-selling games in North America, in the chart park this week, and we're going to be celebrating Oddworld Abe's Odyssey in Strong History later on in the show. But first, a bit of a rant. See, last week started off with a pretty huge story. So huge, in fact, I wish it would have happened a day earlier so I could have covered it. Sadly, it didn't work out for me. So this might seem a bit old for you, dear listener and viewer, but stick with me, all right? Last week, the world's most popular YouTuber, PewDiePie, was broadcasting a live stream of himself playing PlayerUnknown's Battleground. It's a very intense game where you have to kind of sneak around and take out your opponents using rifles and whatnot. We'll actually be talking about PlayerUnknown later in the show, in case you don't know what that is. Well, apparently during the live stream, he made an offhanded remark, which, God, I can't even remember what he said. Man, does anyone know what he said? I don't. I mean, this is a news podcast after all, and I only cover the news that makes the rounds, so I actually didn't hear about it. What are you going to do? Now, I do recall there being a few stories on Monday morning about it. What were they about? It's so hard to recall. But we really need to get to the important part. The most important news story of that day. Clearly the most important part of this story. Absolutely the most important thing that happened regarding PewDiePie that week. I mean, it was given the most coverage, so it's clearly the most important subject. We need to talk about the developer of Firewatch, Campo Sampo, who issued a DMCA takedown against PewDiePie last Monday. Now, this was in regards to what he said during that live stream, which, if there was more media coverage of that, maybe I would know what it was, but what are you going to do? But according to the co-founder of Campo Santo, San Vanaman, the video was taken down due to this. Quote, "I'm sick of this child getting more and more chances to make money off of what we make. He's worse than a closeted racist. He's a propaganda of deceptible garbage that does real damage to the culture around this industry. I urge other developers, and we'll be reaching out to the folks much larger than us, to cut him off from the content that has made him a millionaire. Furthermore, we're complicit. I'm sure we've made money off the 5.7 million views that video has. And that's something for us to think about. Lastly, I love streamers. I watch them daily, and we sent out over 3,000 keys to professional and amateur streamers of FW. FW standing for Firewatch, which of course was the first-person adventure game. I did a video on it a while ago and even did a spoiler cast on it. So if you want to know what that game's about, you can just go take a look. Anyway, that was his quote. But he said closeted racist? Jeez, I wish I knew what he was talking about. But clearly the bigger story here is about the importance of YouTube being protected from the sinister practices of DMCA takedowns. And trust me, I get it. I can personally recall having some of my videos, including Yakuza 5 and Advanced Warfare, the Call of Duty game, being taken down by DMCA takedowns, among other videos. Tons of videos, in fact, I remember being taken down and being very frustrated by it, or being claimed because of one piece of music that was in the background of one level or whatever. It happens more frequently than you think. And this was back when I was getting thousands upon thousands of views every week. Clearly things have changed for me, but this was back in the day when I would be getting thousands of views. And big and niche titles like Yakuza and Call of Duty would bring in heavy traffic. But due to worldwide blocks, my view counts would be down by over a quarter for the week. It was some serious business. Now, was I mad about it? You damn right I was. But YouTube has been trapped in this gray area for so long. At times, they endorse the concept of fair use, so strongly, in fact, that they helped fund a legal team for Jim Sterling when he was being sued over his videos by an angry developer. But at the same time, well, they have automatic copyright detection robots that just go around and claim your videos and block them from worldwide view, even if it was an accident. I remember years and years ago, there was one video of Grand Theft Auto that was taken down because a siren sounded like a Miles Davis song. And so they took it down. Really strange stuff. I'm sure they've improved it since then, but that's just one example that happened not too long ago. And just from a legal standpoint, there's no standard for what's acceptable on YouTube. At last check, it comes down to one simple rule: owner allowance or owner ignorance. But in the case of, PewDiePie, we're going to go with owner allowance, which is to say that the copyright holder decides they don't want their material to be put in a video, they're allowed to take it down. At least when it comes to media outside of YouTube itself. And I say that because I'm sure you all heard about H3H3 Productions' recent victory over another YouTuber. That person sued H3H3 Production, which is a comedy YouTube page. They used clips from this other guy's YouTube videos, and they made like a reaction style video making fun of him, doing little comedy skits about it. But they actually won that case. The YouTuber that was trying to sue H3H3 saying, hey, you're making fun of me, they said, nah, you can't do that. And the judge ruled in the favor of H3H3. So we have checkpoint for content creators dealing with other content creators. Let the drama continue, I guess. But what about music, film, TV shows, and video games? That's where things get a bit more tricky. See, Jim Sterling won a case against a no-name developer regarding slander and libel. It was about what he was saying, not the fact that he was using footage of the games. But at the end of the day, the rights are still solely reserved by the holder of the original material, regardless of any reason, no matter how justified or frivolous. They can enact those rights to remove any video that uses their content. And now people, well, we have a lot of people freaking out on the internet about this PewDiePie situation. They think Campo Santo has opened Pandora's box, and their actions against PewDiePie are going to cause YouTube to fold. Because, of course, video games are the most popular thing on YouTube, for the most part. If you actually break it down by channels, the most popular is music videos from India, followed by wrestling. Yes, really. If you look at a channel based off of views, it's Indian pop music videos, and then WWE Pro Wrestling. It's not subscribers, and it's not the most viewed videos, but the most views per channel. You know what I'm talking about. But a lot of people think this is the end game, all due to the actions of one studio. Obviously, not the fault of PewDiePie, who clearly hasn't created a pattern of behavior, including another incident earlier this year. God, if only we knew what happened. But obviously it wasn't the most important story because it didn't get as much coverage as this. Here's the thing though. We, the modern generation, we need legal precedent. Real legal precedent. Every case has been around the corner of the subject, but never directly into the actual case. Are these videos allowed? Oh, because right now it's totally unclear. Do content creators own their own videos? Or do they just own part of them, even if it's a transformative work, even if there's the concept of fair use? Or here's an even weirder question: is it on a sliding scale of ownership? Do certain behaviors from the content creator make their videos more of theirs or less of theirs, just based off of their behavior? And likewise, does YouTube own any share of these videos? Do they own any part of this? Especially when YouTube makes money off of the videos. They do. That's why commercials play beforehand. They're not just trying to give money to content creators. They make money off of that too. Now, anyone can speculate. Anyone can have an opinion. Anyone can say, absolutely, fair use, 100%, but no one has an actual answer. So why push this off any further? I would love a definitive statement. I would love a court case to actually bring some sort of resolve to this, because if the answer is it's all the copyright holder and not the content creator, like PewDiePie, like anyone on YouTube, that's great. Just say it so we can all move along and do something else. And besides, I've been saying this for years, but the moment that YouTube screws over the content creators, the moment that there's another website that can match YouTube, which sounds impossible, but hey, things happen. Nothing's ever going to beat MySpace. Look what happened, The second there's another website, all those content creators will leave. I guarantee it. And also, if this is the case, that the content is owned by the copyright holder, and when it comes to video games, why exactly did the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One come with YouTube and Twitch upload streaming? Like, why was that built into the system? If you release a game on the PlayStation or the Xbox One in 2017, you know that there is a built-in functionality to upload videos onto YouTube or to stream them, right? Right? That seems obvious, doesn't it? Does that set any sort of precedent? I don't really know. What exactly does any of this mean? No one knows. And if you're frustrated by my indecisiveness of to claim a side or to pick a side, just understand this. I'm frustrated too. This isn't indecisiveness because I don't want to have an opinion. I mean, I kind of have an opinion. The point is that it doesn't really matter because we have no set standard, because all we can do is dig up more questions. Even though YouTube is clearly the most influential platform of this generation besides social media like Facebook, its creators have influenced the way we behave, the way we think, what we value, and what we accept. And we still don't have any answers. Oh, wait a minute. What was I just saying? The way we think, the way we behave, what we value. Oh, that's right. Why the fuck isn't the media talking more about the shitty behavior of PewDiePie? What happened there? Oh, that's right. Oh, I remember now. We're not leaving this one behind. What the fuck happened there? See, this particular topic has nothing to do with money. It has more to do with morality. And because of that, it's become a sidebar to the topic of fair use and YouTube, because everyone wants to write about, are we going to have as much money now because they might take down our videos? Okay, great. It's always about money. It's always more about money than the actual behavior of some of these YouTubers. And you know how I can tell that? Not just because of Monday, but do you remember when PewDiePie paid those people to hold up a sign that said "Death to Jews" and he lost his Disney deal? You might. You probably remember him losing the Disney deal. You might not remember him paying someone to have that sign that said "Death to Jews." They just ignore that, because it doesn't really have any sort of relevancy to like the money and the business end of anything. Now he's dropping the N-word during a live stream. And we need to talk about fair use and what's going on with Campo Santo. What the fuck? We have premeditated racism and now accidental racism? Gee, I wonder what PewDiePie thinks. And sure, he's apologized, just like he always apologizes, just like he's going to apologize in the future. And then, of course, nothing actually changes. He actually gets worse, because before it was this premeditated, oh, it's just a joke, and now he's accidentally saying shit on a live stream, and his fans, they just forgive him. No biggie, which says a lot, doesn't it? Because they don't view this as any sort of a problem. They don't view this as a serious mistake. Racist language, anti-Semitism, they're just jokes, right? They don't warrant any sort of serious reflection. Did he put out a 4-minute apology video? Well, he sounded pretty serious, guys. I think everything's gonna be all right. Now, and there's even people out there that don't think he should have apologized. I'm not saying that people can't have certain patterns of behavior and get over it. I'm not saying that at all. There are people that have come out of the darkness and into the light and are no longer part of like hate groups and shit like that. And then of course there's the opposite, where there are people that used to be really cool that have, been dragged down into hate groups. But this is the part that's got me all fucked up right here. It's his behavior. His behavior is an endorsement at this point. He has such a wide reach and impression for people. They view him as a friend. And when you see a friend that says, this is all right, that's no big deal, you might think, it's no big deal. We're social creatures. That's how we work. We're human beings. Sorry, I'm not saying we're robots or anything that immediately are like, beep, boop, okay, I can be racist now. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that oftentimes this creates a sort of endorsement or denigrates the idea that some things are big deals. For fuck's sake, They call him an influencer. They call him an influencer. He's influencing people. And as others have pointed out, you know, they say it's no big deal. It's no big deal what he said because he was playing Battlegrounds, and this is normal language on Battlegrounds. And I'll stop after this. But what the fuck happened? Like, this is video game culture. Like, the more hardcore you are, the more you want to, like, exclude people, the more you want to excuse racist language. If you're hardcore, you're like, big deal. Don't get triggered over anything. It's just ironic. I'm just pretending to be racist. I'm just pretending to be a piece of shit. I like video games. What? How? What does that have to do with... Why is that the culture? Why is that okay? I really don't understand that. And it's like, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, come on, look at the past 4 years. It's been fucking crazy. How does an industry that was started by a bunch of nerds and pot-smoking hippies, and then, you know, it became revitalized over in Japan and covered the entire world, and now we have games coming from all these different countries, and they're all excellent, there's all these different ideas. How do we have a platform that is more influencing to create empathy? Video games put you in somebody else's shoes. How have they become a safe haven for racism, sexism, and general xenophobia? Not by the video game creators, but by, like, the audience. And if it sounds like I'm fucking reaching here, like, oh, that is a broad brush right there. Well, shit, just take a look at the world's most popular player. Look at his behavior and see how many subscribers he loses over this. Seems like a pretty important topic, but it has nothing to do with money. So the industry didn't really cover it. So I guess we'll move on. All right, that's enough of that topic. And if you think I went a little too far, well, fuck that, because no one else actually talked about this week. It was like a blip. It was like early morning, Monday morning, and the rest of it was all about DMCA takedowns and Campo Santo and bullshit like that. There's a more important topic to this. There really is, and it has to do with video game culture. And what you want that culture to be, well, you're playing a part in it. So if you feel that way, stand the fuck up and say something. Come on. God damn. Whatever. We need to catch a train. Chugga chug chug chug. Here comes the train. Tooty toot toot. Obviously, this is a hard pivot to something more silly. Boop, boop. That is right. We are going to the hype train. Feel the PR vibrations as we barrel towards Video Game Satisfaction Station on the hype train. This is the part of the show where we talk about all the upcoming video games and events to get you hyped up to spend all your money, become a video game guru. And I want to be up front right here. We have a shit ton of Nintendo news. In fact, there is so much Nintendo news, I could have done the entire hype train just about the Nintendo Direct from earlier this week. So there's a lot to unpack. But instead, I've stacked all that non-Nintendo news right up in the front, right? So we're going to start off with all the non-Nintendo news, then we're going to go to the Nintendo Direct, and then we'll be taking a look at this week's releases. Sounds good? I hope so. It doesn't really matter. You don't have a say. You don't actually have a say in the matter. And as I've stated many times before, this is previously recorded material. If I ask you any sort of questions, don't answer. They are rhetoricals. I cannot hear you. Anyway, we're going to start off this hype train with a non-story. Does that make sense? Probably not, but it will in one moment. Once again, I asked a question to you. Do not respond. This is previously recorded material. We need like the bar on the ground. This was recorded previously. Do not call in now. Well, last week, the tech and video game outlet Tech Syndicate, they held a standing interview at some sort of convention with the head of Bethesda's marketing, Pete Hines. Now, during the interview, Mr. Hines pointed out just how much Bethesda is working on, including this, quote, "We even have a game coming out this year that we haven't told anybody about yet. They can wait. It won't be long." End quote. Of course, the interviewer was immediately like, huh? Wait, what'd you just say? You have another game coming out this year that you haven't announced yet? And he pressed Pete Hines for more information, which of course Pete Hines shot down and was like, nope, I'm not going to respond any further, which is really coy. Great. Whatever. Now, it's no doubt that Bethesda is working on other projects at the moment. No publisher and developer the size of Bethesda could afford to have any sort of downtime whatsoever. But a game coming later this year? We're less than 3.5 months away from the end of the year. That's pretty soon. So what exactly do they have up their sleeve? Are we going to see Fallout 5? Are we going to see Elder Scrolls 6? No, of course not. That's ridiculous. And we already know the other studios are busy doing other things like The Evil Within 2 and Wolfenstein 2. So if I had to guess, I'd say this is a mobile project of some sort, you know, kind of like, whatever that thing was called, Fallout Shelter? I don't know, I played it for like 4 days in a row, and I was really addicted, and I was like, fuck this, so I deleted it. But, you know, if I had to guess, I'm going to say Elder Scrolls Augmented Reality. And if I'm right about this, I'm going to act so smug, because I watched that Apple event and they were talking about augmented reality. I bet they're getting in on it. Okay. Toot toot, moving on. Well, it finally happened. We have our first rip-off of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, but rather than a new game, this is going to be a new piece of DLC to a game that already exists. Well, kind of. It partially exists because it's in early access. What am I talking about? Well, Epic Games has added the Battle Royale mode to Fortnite, which of course was released in early access back in July on the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC. Now, Epic Games Worldwide Creative Director Donald Mustard announced the news in a promotional video explaining their rationale, saying, quote, "We're huge fans of the Battle Royale genre and games like PUBG and H1Z1, and we thought Fortnite was the perfect world to build one," end quote. And before we go any further, real quick, give the man credit. He's like, hey, we stole this idea from those other games. Give them credit. They're being upfront. Now, much like Battlegrounds, Fortnite Battle Royale will see 100 players duking it out until only one survives. However, this will include all the crafting and structural building of the traditional Fortnite game, which you don't see in things like Fortnite and H1Z1. The mode is currently live to all players right now, but will officially launch on September 26th. But it's an early access game. And how does this work? Whatever. We have a lot to talk about here. So here's a fun fact about Fortnite, on the PlayStation 4 at least. Did you know that you could just take a mouse and a keyboard, plug it into your PlayStation 4, and bam, you can use that as a controller? It's true. On Fortnite, you absolutely can. It's pretty great because, of course, a mouse is easier when it comes to shooters. You can just get headshots like crazy. Problem there. Well, I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense because previously the game was just a bunch of co-op, a horde mode type of game. Now that you have a player versus player mode instead of just co-op, maybe that might be a bit of an issue. Maybe you might want to take back the whole keyboard and mouse functionality. Now, I haven't tested it out. Maybe they already took it out. But if they didn't, that's going to be a serious issue on the PlayStation 4, especially because I don't think that there's crossplay between the PC and PS4 version. As for the idea of borrowing so much from Battlegrounds, more power to Epic Games. See, here's the thing about Fortnite. It doesn't really have much of a direction. All of the systems in it are really good, but there's no cohesive concept that brings them together. For instance, every mission involves collecting stuff. You have to break it down using your pickaxe, which is actually really fun. You have to target certain areas of an object, and you can actually break them down faster. It keeps everything super engaging. And then you build a fort, and then you press a button that brings in waves of enemies, and you have to protect that thing. So it's basically like horde mode. Okay, that doesn't sound that bad. No, it's not. It's fine, but the worlds are really big, and just you're with all these other players, and there's no sense of direction, so they all run off into just different parts of this huge world, and you're defined to protect this one tiny sliver of that humongous world, and it's just like, huh? Why exactly are we doing this? Why do we need a home base like this? Like, this seems like the opposite of what you'd want to do in this big world. Not to mention, you can play as different characters that have different guns and different abilities, and you can send them out if you're not using them as a playable character to collect things or as part of a team. It is incredibly confusing. So you've got this brilliant crafting system that makes everything so simple, and everything else is just too goddamn complicated. How about instead of just shooting, hordes after hordes, why not build a giant player versus player in the gigantic environments? It's already built for a battleground if you think about it. Because this game, let me tell you, it is just a collection of mechanics in search of a genre. Seriously. And they can take the hit and be called copycats, but it's better than just being a nebulous nothing of a game. I'm actually really excited to check it out. And if you're interested in Fortnite, I'd say maybe hold off until you get more feedback on this Battle Royale mode, because the core game, it's interesting, but there's nothing to bring it together just yet. Okay, toot toot. Well, here's some positive news. Following the recent ports to the personal computer, multiple outlets are listing that the 2009 title Bayonetta and the 2010 title Vanquish are coming to the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. However, if these placeholders from different stores are accurate, the game would be bundled together in a double pack of sorts at retail. Now, neither of these have been confirmed, but they would likely be available separate in digital stores. And that's really the whole story right there. But I'm going to say This is absolutely going to happen. And let's just, cut a story off of the hype train right here. Remember all those rumors we were seeing from multiple different retail outlets that said that Okami, the Capcom game, was going to be remastered and coming to the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC? Well, after a few weeks of that, Capcom just straight up confirmed it. And they're like, yep, Okami is coming this December. Check it out. You can pick it up at retail, which I recommend you do. That's a really good game. But the point is that the more pre-release listings, pre-announcement listings that we see a product getting, the more likely it is to happen. And for no reason whatsoever, without a rumor or anything, this double pack is listed by multiple online stores. So I'm going to go ahead and assume this is a thing. Now, if you've never played these games, you're in for some awesome action. And that sounds kind of generic. I get it, like, action, what the fuck is that? But both of these games are the perfect summary of an action game. You probably heard of Bayonetta. It's awesome. It's a little bit like Devil May Cry, but Vanquish, totally underrated. You literally slide around on the floor while smoking cigarettes and going behind cover and then shooting hundreds and hundreds of robots. It's like Gears of War on speed mixed with anime. It's badass. You gotta check it out. Vanquish and Bayonetta together. I'm gonna go ahead and say $40. They're going to have it on sale for $40 when it goes to retailers. I'm going to say, before the end of the year. That's my prediction. All right, toot toot. Another quick hit rumor. According to Kotaku, the upcoming Tokyo Game Show will have one less major announcement from Atlus. Unfortunately for Atlus, they accidentally might have leaked this using a live stream banner ad. This was seen on the Japanese site Nico Nico, which is like, YouTube, but for Japan. It's really popular over there. Here's what the banner ad said. Quote, PlayStation 4, Dragon's Crown Pro. Pre-order soon. End quote. Oops. Probably shouldn't have. Oops. Okay. Which has obviously led many to believe that the 2013 beat 'em up from the PlayStation 3 and Vita will be coming to the PlayStation 4. Once again, I'm going to say that's a sure thing. I took a look at the banner ad and I thought about it for a second and I thought to myself, who in their right mind would purchase ad space on a live streaming service as a prank? You know what I mean? And this is right before Tokyo Game Show. This is really suspect timing right here. As for Dragon's Crown, it's a pretty cool game, just a tad bit overrated in my book. It's a beat 'em up that features these really mesmerizing painting, almost like living paint style art. It's really cool, but it also featured a cartoonishly well-endowed woman who's always having her breasts like flowing. It's really weird. I don't know how I feel about that. So there were some people back in 2013 that were like, that's really weird way to design a woman. And then a bunch of other people were like, fuck you, it's censorship. So they went on Metacritic and they gave it a bunch of positive reviews. So now the game is kind of overrated. It's fine, it's fun, I like it, nothing amazing, but yeah, there's some problematic things to it, but it's okay. I think it was free on PlayStation Plus a couple of years ago on the PlayStation 3. It's good. Good-ish. I thought it was alright. It's okay. Okay. Toot toot. So I don't know if you heard, but there's a new iPhone coming next month, or I guess like 2 iPhones coming in the next 2 months. And an Apple Watch and an Apple TV. Lots of Apple stuff was announced this week. They had an Apple event, and it was okay. But at their live press event, there was one major surprise for video game fans. That game company, that's the actual name of the game company, that game company, the developers of Flow, Flower, and Journey, they announced their next big title, simply called Sky. Huh. I like that name. Sky. Wow. The game heavily resembles the team's previous work, specifically with Journey. You have a series of cloaked figures, 4 of them, running along a path before jumping off and flying into the blue sky, full of clouds. The game will apparently use the Siri remote on the Apple TV, and you can just use one finger for that, but it's also going to be playable on the iPhone and iPad when it launches later this winter. No exact release date. Now, altogether, it's neatish. It's cool. I'm really curious to see if there's any sort of relation to the Journey universe. I know that Sony has Journey on lockdown. Journey will never be released outside of the PlayStation ecosystem, but I wonder if Sony owns the universe itself, because this looks a lot like Journey. Now, there's a bit of an ironic slant to this whole game. See, earlier this year, the game Rime was released, and everyone said Rime was kind of a ripoff of Eco and Journey. And no joke, I was trying to find screenshots for Sky, and they kept popping up. I went, no, I want to see pictures of Sky. Why the hell is Rhyme popping up? I'm not kidding. I literally thought I was looking at screenshots from Rhyme because they had a figure cloaked in red, and it looked just like the character from Rhyme. So Sky looks like a game that borrowed from the same developers that are developing Sky. Wrap your heads around that. Toot toot. Okay, lastly, before we get to the Nintendo news, we have 6 brand new entries into the Xbox One backwards compatibility program. Or I guess they're 6 old entries. Nope, don't argue with me, okay? Alright, let's just go, alright? We have Saints Row the 3rd, Slender the Arrival, Monopoly Deal, Undertow, Super Contra, and Virtual On. Here's a weird tidbit. Virtual On was a Japanese-only Xbox 360 game. Does that mean you can play it on your American Xbox One? Because the American Xbox One is universally compatible, whereas the American Xbox 360 is not, and this is an Xbox 360 game. Somebody let me know. It's so confusing. It's just so fucked up. But altogether, I'm gonna say this is a pretty bad week for the backwards compatible titles. Like Undertow is a really forgettable twin stick shooters. Super Contra, if I remember correctly, had bad emulation. It wasn't super good. Monopoly Deal, that's a fucking board game, so why don't you just bring that out and invite some friends over? And Slender the Arrival is god-awful. It's such a bad game. But Saints Row the 3rd is hands down one of the best games of last generation, and easily the best in the series. See, here's my thing. When it comes to Saints Row, I know a lot of people got on board with Saints Row 4. I didn't like that one as much. When it comes to Saints Row, I feel like it went too far and it got like too weird because now they're living inside of virtual universes and fighting space aliens. Saints Row the 3rd had everything down. Everything was incredibly bizarre. You had like pro wrestlers and exploding rickshaws, but it was all wrapped around a somewhat believable world. So you had a real world that created, like a structure. You had these weird elements that created tension, and then when the chaos would happen, the tension broke, and it works better. You have to have, you have to have the guy that's going to set up the joke, and you have to have the guy that's going to make the joke, and that's how it worked before. When you're inside of VR and shooting aliens, it's kind of like, well, everything's a joke. That's not funny, That's just like cartoonish, I don't know. Okay, toot toot. Let's move on to all of the big Nintendo news of the week. And before anybody accuses me of favoritism, I'm just covering what happened this week. It's all I've got to work with. Besides, not all of this news is positive for Nintendo. See for yourself with the first story right here. So remember last week we were talking about the Mortal Kombat on the Sega Genesis and on the Super Nintendo, and how this was the perfect game to highlight the differences between the platforms? Well, probably not, because the average viewer duration only lasted 15 minutes last week, and that segment was way later in the show. But if you did happen to listen to it, you'll be happy to know we have another one of those pivotal releases. And once again, it highlights the weakness of a Nintendo platform. If you're a Nintendo fan, calm down. This is just the news. Okay? Okay. NBA 2K18 will be going on sale this Tuesday, even though it technically released last Friday. Anyway, it's going to be out on the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. However, the Switch version is where things get complicated. Unlike the Sony and Microsoft release, the Switch version will be digital only for its first month, and then it will eventually come to retail shelves on October 17th. I know what you're saying. Big deal. Big deal, who cares? I'll just download it so I can get my NBA on my TV and also take it on the go. Well, some of you talk like commercials, and that's weird. But if you're going to go ahead and do that, you might want to pick up an SD card along the way because, well, here's the thing. The Switch's 32GB internal memory isn't enough to play NBA 2K18 on your Switch. The game all by itself is 22.9 gigabytes. All right, 22.9 gigabytes. Also keep in mind, the Switch's memory, you only can use 25 gigabytes. And here's the real kicker. The save file is 5 gigabytes. So if you plan on just using a digital copy of the game, you're 3 gigabytes short. You need an SD card. Yeah, okay. So I can hear some of you say, screw that. I'll wait for the physical version. No big deal. Then I can have my NBA on the go. Well, before you get too excited, you should know that even then, the game's going to be taking up 16.1 gigabytes. And of course, you're still going to have that 5 gigabyte save file. So that's 21.1 gigabytes of the 25 gigabyte capacity. And even if you're excited for all of that, they've announced that, well, 2K18 on the Switch is going to have some compromises. It's going to have all of the modes, all of the story modes, all of the multiplayer modes, all of that's still going to be in there, all the training modes, it's all there. However, the frame rate has been slashed in half. On the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, it's 60 frames per second. On the Nintendo Switch, it's going to be 30 frames per second. I told you it wasn't all good news. But on the plus side, you're still going to be able to see that story mode, so that's good. But what a completely insane set of expectations. I remember hearing about the game cart format for the Switch when they announced it, and I assumed that the system would utilize it as some sort of SD card, something that would quickly access the game's data and just like drop it into its memory pool and swap it out at a consistent rate. But nope. These games are getting downloaded directly to your system, just like on the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. And that's really bad news for the Switch. I'm not trying to shit on the Switch. I like the console. I play the console. I enjoy it. I like the Joy-Cons. I really like that Pro Controller. The Pro Controller. I love Splatoon 2. Can't wait for Mario. I love my Switch. Seriously. I'm not shitting on the console. Relax. But, I don't think I could go for this. I don't think anyone could really go for this with full knowledge. First of all, digital only, and it will cost you more than the copy of the game because you have to get an SD card, which is insane. Because you would assume that things should be cheaper on the digital platform as opposed to more expensive. So that's bizarre. Second of all, you have a weird month-long delay? How does that even happen? This was a game that was part of the very first Nintendo Switch reveal trailer. Remember back when they announced it, they showed those guys that were playing NBA. They were playing some sort of like NBA game. Why is there a month-long delay? And lastly, I'm not trying to be a frame rate snob here, and I certainly am not, but that is a hard pill to swallow because one of the reasons NBA is 2K is so good is because it has a realistic presentation. And if you watch sports on TV, they broadcast at 60 hertz, 60 frames per second, right? So if you're going to be cutting the frame rate to 30, you're kind of killing the ambiance out of it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Well, let me know if you buy it and let me know what you think. Anyway, toot toot. All right, out with the new, in with the old. Nintendo has made a surprising announcement regarding their plans to re-release old titles. What's that? Virtual Console? Of course not, that's too marketable. Instead, Hamster Corporation will be expanding their Arcade Archive series to the classic Nintendo titles of the 1980s. For those of you not in the know, the Arcade Archives collection has featured some really solid emulation for classic Neo Geo and Konami titles, and those of course are available on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, a bunch of different platforms. But soon, you'll be able to play the arcade versions of Mario Bros. Versus Super Mario Brothers versus Balloon Flight versus Ice Climber versus Pinball versus Clue Clue Land versus Punch-Out exclusively on the Switch. And before you ask, yes, a lot of those games were on the NES. Well, technically Punch-Out was not because it's a totally different game that has like wireframing or whatever. But these are the actual arcade versions from the NES versus arcade cabinets. So that's kind of cool, right? But when I heard about this, let me take it back to when there wasn't a virtual console announced yet, which I guess we're still in. What I'm trying to say is, I've been skeptical of the past few months when everyone's been saying, "Oh, the virtual console is dead." It's not going to happen. There's no virtual console. I was like, bullshit. They're going to have a virtual console eventually. They have to. It makes so much money. But this right here kind of clinches it, right? Which is fine, I guess. Virtual console always was a weird name, and it didn't really make that much sense. Besides, people are used to downloading classic games on their phones without any sort of gimmicky marketing wraparound. Virtual console, your grandpa doesn't know what that means. How's he going to download ActRaiser? He's going to be confused. But anyway, now that the Switch is launched, and the old games were, arcade archives from Neo Geo, and now we have these Nintendo first-party titles being added to that, I guess you could say the virtual console is over. R.I.P. Goodbye. Toot toot. Alright, let's get to all the 3DS announcements, because there were a surprising amount of them during this Nintendo Direct, of course. First off, we have the brand new 2DS. New 2DS. I'm still not used to either of those names. This will be in the clamshell version of the 2DS, which has all the same features as the new 3DS, but with one less D, so keep that in mind. It's more of the same, but it's orange and it's white. So if you've ever wanted a 2DS that resembles a dreamsicle, now's your time, champ. Go for it. Let's just move on. Toot toot. Well, here's one announcement that I personally did not see coming. Minecraft has finally come to the new 3DS. Yes, really. The game that's been available on your phone since 2011 has finally come to a Nintendo handheld. But if you're paying attention there, you notice that I did not say the 3DS, I said the new 3DS. That's right, if you have the standard 3DS, you know, the regular 3DS console or regular 2DS console, you can't play this. Which kind of makes sense because the new 3DS has an added boost of processing power. Now, this version does not include glasses-free 3D yet, but apparently that's going to be added in a future update. But then again, the tweet that cited that comment, that got deleted. So is 3D coming to Minecraft? I don't know. I hope it does, because that would look cool. I don't know, even though I'll never download this, but it's kind of neat. It's out right now, by the way, if you want to buy it. So go ahead and do that. Toot toot. Well, it's been at least 3 months since Nintendo announced a really lame Kirby game, so we have another one for the 3DS. It's Kirby Battle Royale, and it appears to be some sort of 4-player beat-em-up, where 4 Kirbys smack the bejesus out of each other for prizes. There's going to be up to 10 modes, each with their own unique goals and stipulations for victory. In the trailer, both an isometric and a side-scrolling perspective can be seen, and you can use Amiibo. It's gonna be out January 19th next year. Always good to see Nintendo spin the wheels of the Kirby franchise with a series of meaningless spin-offs that will never be revisited in the future. God forbid we actually push the main franchise forward or even give a 3D entry to Kirby. I mean, it's only been 26 years. I'm sure that will happen eventually. Toot toot. Now, if you're watching the video version of this episode, this screenshot that's behind me, this is a real screenshot from Nintendo. This is what a 3DS game looks like. It's 240p. Jesus Christ. Okay. Anyway, a recent study from Rice University deemed that only sociopaths tolerate Mario Party. And apparently Rice University is going to be releasing their findings in the brand new Mario Party, the Top 100 on the 3DS on November 10th this year. Now, maybe I don't have my information right, but if I recall correctly, the psychologist collected 100 minigames, the most severe ones from the Mario Party series, and put them on the 3DS. Now, if the test subject didn't immediately protest, it was later determined that they were not sociopaths, but those that continued to play, well, they were sociopaths. And now the test will continue on a grander scale in just 45 days with wireless play. May God have mercy on us all. Now we're going to go on to the Switch news in just a second, but can we take a step back and look what's going on here with the 3DS? We've got a brand new 3DS exclusive, a new 3DS exclusive in Minecraft. We have a totally random Kirby game, and now we have this weird Mario Party collection. And well, there's some other things. Obviously, they announced that Yokai Watch 2 thing, sub-sequel, whatever it is. But I think this is it. I think this is the end of the 3DS. Like, there's a lot of first-party stuff here. It seems like they're just getting it out the door. Like, I'd say they're ready to turn off the lights and call it a system, because the Switch is going to need some third-party, well, it's going to need some exclusives, some first-party exclusives. Because while third parties are on board with the Switch in some really promising ways, who knows? You know, you've got to add that Nintendo style. And besides that, the Switch is a portable and it's a home console, and no matter what Reggie says, it's a portable. It's a portable! So I think they're calling it a day. I think they're killing off the 3DS. And I've said this before, but you know, when I look at the 3DS, I see like a little brother's hand-me-down. It's a good console, and you know, Nintendo has moved on to other things. Let the 9-year-olds that play their 3DSs spend $40 on a 3-year-old title because they don't know how video games work. That's fine. Just move away from it. Besides, we'll be talking about the NPDs later this episode, which of course tracks the North American sales. But of the last 8 recorded months so far this year, only one 3DS title has entered the top 10. It was Fire Emblem Echoes, which was back in May. And the console might be selling well collectively, and I know it's doing better in Japan, especially with the brand new Dragon Quest, but it's time to move on. You know, you can still have those games on the store shelves, and I'm sure you're going to make a mint off of them, but it is time to take that development and put it into the Nintendo Switch. Alright, let's head straight into the biggest surprise of the Nintendo Direct, and of course it regards the Switch, and it's all about Bethesda and their subsidiary id Software. First of all, Doom, one of 2016's best games, not only that, but you know, one of the most graphically intense games of 2016, is coming to the Nintendo Switch. Yes, really, Doom is coming to the Nintendo Switch. Now, we don't know much about how the game will perform in terms of resolution or frame rate. However, a few screenshots have already shown that there's going to be a decrease in lighting and effects, and clarity. Nevertheless, this is huge. Not because it's some big bloody shooter. I mean, seriously, Nintendo has no issues with violence whatsoever. Nintendo lets everything on their platforms. It's been that way for over 10 years. That's an old reputation from back in the 16-bit era. But having a real deal first-person shooter that everyone already knows is good is a huge deal. And think about it for a moment, you can just take it on the go with you. That's really badass. But the only thing really holding back this announcement is that it's an old game. We've already played it. It's not new. But that's why the next announcement, Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, is coming to the Switch. This cements it as a major get for Nintendo. Now that's going to be out on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One and PC on October 27th, which funny enough is actually the same day as Super Mario Odyssey is going to be released. So conflict of interest? I don't know. And we don't have a release date for the Switch version yet for either Doom or Wolfenstein. But this shows that Nintendo is out there building those vital third-party relationships. Now, are these versions going to be compromised? Yeah, probably. I mean, look at 2K18. It needs internal memory if you plan on playing anything else. And the frame rate has been slashed in half, right? But putting that aside, just put that aside for a moment. The idea of taking new games, the newest games, on the go is incredibly appealing. Like, that is the whole point of the Switch right there. The idea that this is a current-gen console that you can take on the go. That's a major selling point, and I'm sure that could actually increase demand for the Switch. But I will say the idea of playing Doom or Wolfenstein like on a bus or a card ride, this actually kind of makes me motion sick just thinking about it. But before we move on, Bethesda's final announcement was Skyrim on the Switch has a release date, which is November 17th. I'm not super jazzed for this, but I think it's going to sell just well because, you know, it's the Switch, and the Switch is so early that everyone's buying everything, and this is, once again, a known game that everybody knows. But I really don't want to sell this short. I don't want to sell this short because they have a developer like id that's willing to take a chance and port some of their titles to the Switch, no matter how underpowered this is. And that really sends a message out to other developers like, hey, take a shot. We're going for it. We're the guys that make these really graphically intense games, and we're still going to be putting this out. I think a lot of publishers will watch the sales of these two titles really closely, and, you know, it's the NPD, so everybody knows what everyone else is selling, and that's going to motivate or discourage those publishers to make the jump to the Switch with major new titles. Now, I'm sure we're going to get plenty of old games kind of, you know, softballed towards the Switch, but this is going to say, do these newer titles, these major AAA titles, how well do they perform on the Switch for third parties? Anyway, toot toot. Let's really push through these last few stories because they aren't huge by any means, but, you know, they're just kind of like catch-ups. I have something in my eye. I cannot get this thing out of my eye. I don't know what it is. I have something in my eye while I'm trying to record this podcast. It's so annoying. What is that? Okay, I think I got it. Yep, I got it. There's your update. That's the most important story of the week. Let's go over to Square Enix. Toot toot. Because Square Enix, their weird game called Project Octopath Traveler working title. Given the state of current Japanese RPG naming conventions, that might actually be the name. Well, we got a quick glimpse into the gameplay, which centers around 8 different heroes who interact with their communities in different ways. One dude can walk up to anybody and fight anyone, and this girl can walk around and charm anyone and make them follow her, so gender roles are intact here. Awesome. It looks really good. They just put out a demo, and I really want to check out that demo. I haven't checked it out yet. Plus, it has this crazy pixel sprite character art instead of a 3D world, and the color palette is straight out of Vagrant Story. Who doesn't love that? But they are calling it HD 2D? Whatever the fuck that means. 2D's been in HD before. I don't get it. Anyway, toot toot. And here's a real surprise. Xenoblade Chronicles will in fact be out by the end of the year. That is right. Xenoblade, a Xenoblade game, will be out the same year it's been announced. I'm completely blown away by that news. It's going to be out on December 1st, if you're interested. And if you're one of those diehard fans that plans to, I don't know, spend over 100 hours inside of the game, why not spend over $100 on the game and get the special edition, which comes with a metal case, art book, and a goddamn CD. Seriously, who uses CDs? It's 2017. I haven't used a CD this entire decade. Anyway, if that's not enough for you, you can also buy the Xenoblade Chronicles Pro Controller, which retails for $75. That's $5 more than the traditional Pro Controller. And it looks just like that Pro Controller, except it has a green X. And, a red stripe around it. Yeah. Still, mad props to Monolith for releasing a game less than 2 years after they announced it. I said it wouldn't be happening. I predicted it wouldn't be out this year. I was totally wrong. Toot toot. And lastly, in the Nintendo Direct news, a Super Mario Odyssey Switch console will be released on October 27th. Now, it's going to be the exact same console, but it's going to be coming with red Joy-Cons, a carrying case, and a digital copy of Super Mario Odyssey. Shame on you, Nintendo. Don't make kids download games. Put the cartridge in the box. It's going to be $380, presumably, because you're getting a copy of the game and you're getting a carrying case. So, no deals for you. You're paying for everything in that box. There's no deal there. That's really the whole story right there. And they finally showed off Mario's nipples because he was on a beach and he was wearing swim trunks. That was a big deal. Whatever. Let's move on. Toot toot. Altogether, I'm going to say that this was a fantastic Nintendo Direct. Arguably, some respects, it was better than the E3 presentation because we got actual dates, we got major third-party announcements, and we even got a demo for Octopath. Now, there weren't any Metroid Prime 3 logos, but even then, I'd say this was a pretty strong Nintendo Direct. Okay, now we can move on. Toot toot. Oh, but we're not done with Nintendo news yet. They had a really big week. We get to talk about my favorite subject again, the NES Classic. So first, let's cover my predictions, my history of predictions for the NES Classic, in case you've missed them in the past. First, I predicted that the NES Classic would outsell the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One during last season's holiday season. I still totally believe that. Had stock been available, that would have happened, but it didn't. I was wrong. Dead wrong. Then, I predicted that Nintendo would bring it back for holiday 2017, but they would swap out some of the third-party games for Nintendo first-party games, so that would cut down on the licensing cost. Jury's still out on whether or not they're going to have the exact same games, but I was also confident in saying that they would not release the SNES Classic for a few years. So I was wrong there. And when they made the announcement for the SNES Classic, I'm pretty sure I gave up on the NES Classic ever coming back this fall, and now it's coming back this fall, so I'm wrong. I'm wrong about everything I ever say about the NES Classic or the SNES Classic. The NES Classic will be back this fall. And Nintendo also announced that they're going to be continuing production of the SNES Classic in 2018, so good for them. So, the SNES Classic is going to be out on September 29th, in case you're interested. Good luck with that. And since I'm so great at making these predictions, here's one last one. Nintendo will never release a Virtual Boy Classic. Your move, Nintendo. Toot toot. And lastly, before we talk about the games coming out this week, Nintendo fixed their dumb Switch voice chat app, the thing that's on your phones. Before you had to keep the screen on the entire time and you couldn't switch to another app without severing the connection. Now the screen doesn't have to be on and you can look at other apps. That's the whole story. Awesome. Way to do your job, Nintendo. Toot toot. Now here are the games coming out this week because this has been a long hype train. On Tuesday, Endspace is going to be on the PlayStation 4. Mary Skelter Nightmares will be on the PlayStation Vita. Burly Men at Sea will be on the PlayStation 4 and Vita. Hidden Dragon Legend Shadow Trace will be on the PlayStation 4. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite will be on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. I'm really looking forward to that one. Echo is going to be on the PlayStation 4 and PC. NBA 2K18 is going to be out on damn near everything, and it technically came out last Friday, but whatever. This is the official release date. Hex will be on the PlayStation 4. Then on Thursday, Arrowheads will be on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. SteamWorld Dig 2 will be on the Nintendo Switch. On Friday, Project Cars 2 will be on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. Pokemon Gold and Silver version will be out on the Nintendo 3DS. Those are two separate titles. You cannot just buy one. The Lego Ninjago movie video game will be on the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. Raiders of the Broken Planet will be on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. Pokken Tournament will be out on the Nintendo Switch. I played that on the Wii. It is not a good game. Do not get Pokken Tournament. Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 will be on the Nintendo Switch. I played that on the PlayStation 4. Not a good game. Do not bother with it. And the Atari Flashback 8 Gold will be out. That's a console. That's a micro console. And the Sega Genesis Flashback TV will also be out on Friday. I've heard really mixed things about both of those, so maybe don't. Maybe don't. Boop, boop. That is going to do it for the hype train. Jesus, that was a long hype train. It's all thanks to the Nintendo Direct, and I didn't even cover everything that happened there. They also announced some new character, Fire Emblem Warriors, but who gives a shit? Anyway, it's steamy in here. I think we need to step outside. Ooh, I know a place that's always warm with the glow of cold, hard cash. That's right, it's time for the Chart Park, the land where money grows on trees. Yes, the Chart Park. This is the part of the show we talk about the legal, financial, and business news in the video game industry. We find out which fat cats of Wall Street will dip their top hats towards Lady Luck. So here's some good news starting off. There is no goddamn Nintendo news here. At least I don't think there is. I'm pretty sure there isn't. I don't really know. Seriously, I love my Switch, but goddamn, I like it when the weeks are a little bit more divided or diverse in their subject matter. But now, here's the sad news. Here's the really sad news. After 18 years with the company, Bruce Straley has announced his departure from Naughty Dog. Straley made the announcement on the company's official blog, explaining his choice, quote, "This has been the hardest decision of my career. Naughty Dog is my home. The kennel is my family. I've learned so much from working with the incredible team, but after heading up 3 extremely demanding projects and taking some extended time away from the office, I found my energy focusing in other directions and slowly realized this was the signal that it was time to move on." End quote. Okay, before we move on any further, I hate the fact that Naughty Dog refers to where they work as the kennel. Like, it sounds like bad video game writing, so whatever. Anyway, Straley has been a huge contribution to Naughty Dog, dating all the way back to 1999 when he was an artist on Crash Team Racing. He would continue working in art when it comes to the Jak and Daxter trilogy before taking on the role of co-director for the first Uncharted title alongside series creator Amy Hennig. From there, he would collaborate once again with Amy Hennig for its sequel before co-directing The Last of Us with Neil Druckmann. They would also work together on Uncharted 4. But here's a fun fact for you. Did you know before joining Naughty Dog, Bruce Straley worked on Gex 2 and 3 on the PlayStation 1? Now think about that for a second. Those were made by Crystal Dynamics, and Amy Hennig was working at Crystal Dynamics at the time. Do you think they met there? Maybe. Maybe. I guess this news took everyone by surprise, myself included, but once you step back, the events sort of line up and it all makes a little bit more sense. This dude has been busy, really busy, since 2007. And you hear those interviews with Amy Hennig about how Naughty Dog crunches really hard. And in case you don't know, crunch is when it's like, maybe we'll work for 18 hours straight today and every day, like 3 months. It can get like that, man. It sounds brutal. So once he got his chance to step away and decompress, I'm sure he had a chance to listen to himself, and himself probably said, "Don't fucking go back there. We need to do something else with our lives." And so he's like, "All right, I'm gonna go do this stuff instead." I'm honestly gonna give a prediction right here. He's such a creative person. I'm gonna assume he's gonna be going into mobile games. No, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to see if that would get anybody mad. But good on him. Even if he ever wants to remotely get back into the video game industry, somebody somewhere will gladly pay him lots and lots of money just to come back. Trust me, he's a really big name. Moving on. So here's a little bit of a pit stop of sales information before we get to the charts later on in the show, and it does have a bit of a spoiler along the way, but it's been revealed that Destiny 2 sales are down when compared to the first game and its first week sales, at least when it comes to retail and when it comes to the UK. Now that's a lot of caveats, I realize, but there's a reason we're focusing on this, because Activision has confirmed, or I guess Activision Blizzard has confirmed, that the PlayStation Network sales of Destiny 2 have broken the record for global day one sales, which, given how popular digital sales have been as of late, that's some serious business. Not to mention they had hit 1.2 million concurrent users, which is insane, and that's just on the PlayStation 4 and on the Xbox One. This is before they even go to PC. I wanted to add a little Macho Man in there. So I was thinking about this last, it was the Tuesday before it came out, because the game was released on Wednesday, and it was a Tuesday, and I was just calling around stores. I already had my copy in the mail, and I was calling around stores, and I was like, "Are you doing a midnight for this?" No midnight for Destiny 2. Calling up GameStops. No midnight. Do you know of any store that is? Nope. Calling up Best Buys. Nope. No midnight. Really? Destiny 2. Really big game. No midnight sales? Anywhere? That's really weird, especially because this is when they like to kick off that season. And I think they did it for Madden, so why not Destiny 2? I mean, it just didn't add up. So it got me thinking, like, okay, well, in case you don't know, the reason midnights happen, it's not to push sales of a game, it's the other way around. If they get enough sales, then they do a midnight, and then that's how they try and capitalize off of sales, because people like to go together in groups. That's how it works. GameStop, once they hit the minimum that they need for a midnight, they do a midnight, and that's just how it works. So it got me thinking, maybe retail isn't getting pressed as hard for Destiny 1, which makes sense because, more people have moved on to digital things, right? But at the same time, the hype was off the scale. So you could see on Twitter, on Facebook, on many different sites, people were really hyped for Destiny 2. They couldn't wait. They were already pre-ordering their copies. It made me wonder, like, what the fuck is going on? So if the majority or a huge amount of the sales aren't at retail, it really makes you think that it has to be digital. So now we have this information about breaking global sales, day one sales for the PlayStation Network, which means all those sales were either pre-orders or day of. It makes a lot of sense. We'll definitely find out more about this in November when Activision Blizzard release their quarterly reports. I'm really excited to hear about that because it's a major title, and if it somehow had the majority sales on digital, that's a pretty big deal for the industry. That would be a shift, Anyway, moving on. Telltale finally has a new CEO. And if you're completely unaware, there's been a sort of game of musical chairs when it comes to leadership at Telltale. First, there was Dan Connors, who actually co-founded the company. He stepped down, and he was replaced by Kevin Berner 2 years ago. Then in March, Kevin Berner stepped down and was replaced by Dan Connors again. So the old CEO became the new CEO. Now, after 6 months of negotiations, Petey Haley is going to become the new CEO of Telltale, at least for the afternoon. Who knows? Maybe he'll step down and Dan Connors can become the CEO again. Haley has made the rounds in the industry, working alongside Peter Molyneux in the early 2000s during the production of Fable and Black and White. He then went on to work for EA, Sony, and CrowdStar before co-founding Red Robot Labs, which I guess makes mobile games and has something to do with augmented reality. I don't know, but he's probably best known for his time working at Zynga Games, which of course is a mobile developer. Now, if you ask me, this dude seems like a perfect fit for Telltale Games. Like, beyond the types of games that he's worked on, it's not like, oh, he worked on Fable, it's perfect for The Walking Dead. It's not that. It's that he's been involved in either gigantic companies like EA or Sony, and then smaller developers like Lionhead, then super small operations like single-digit operations like Red Robot Labs. Now he's going to the biggest small company in the industry right now, which sounds incredibly strange, but hear me out. Telltale has 400 employees, which is pretty big for a developer. But as you know, Telltale is, going into publishing. So that makes them kind of small for a developer publisher. Not only that, but if you ever noticed that Telltale has a bazillion projects going on at once, they have, just so many different series that are going on parallel. Well, that's because they have a bunch of small teams. So it's a big company with a bunch of very small teams working on very small projects, which makes them the biggest, tiniest, largest, smallest developer publisher? I don't know. But he seems like the right guy for the company because they're in a transitional phase. There's no denying that. On one hand, they deal with some of the biggest properties in the world. Like, who else is working on The Walking Dead, Minecraft, Batman, Guardians of the Galaxy, and a bunch of other franchises at the same time? Think about that, at the same time. That's crazy. And yet they're nowhere near the size of a modern AAA publisher and developer. So he's got a full deck. Whatever happens next is going to be falling on him. So best of luck, Pete Haley. Holly? I don't know. It doesn't matter. He's probably going to step down and have Dan Connors take over again. Anyway, moving on. I was actually debating whether or not to put this next story in because it's not much of a story as it is an interview. But anyway, last month, Lawbreakers came out on the PlayStation 4 and PC. I actually reviewed it. I thought it was awesome. It's like a team-based shooter. Really good. I highly recommend it. I didn't like everything about it, but we'll get to that. But the sales of the game are not so good. Because like I said, it was a PlayStation 4 console exclusive, and it failed to make the top 15 on PSN for August of last month, which is real bad. And on Steam, it's doing even worse with like 7,000 concurrent players at its peak. It came out last month? That's not good. Now, there's a video circulating around lately that essentially mocks the supposed failure of the game, and it pins the entire failure on the boss of Boss Key, Cliff Bleszinski. You might remember Cliff Bleszinski. He used to work on things like Gears of War and Unreal Tournament, and then we started Boss Key, and they've, They made this video that just made fun of him. So he was speaking with GameSpot, the video game outlet, not GameStop, GameSpot, and Blazinski gave a rather candid interview, and I want to go through a few quotes that he said. Here's what he said. Quote, on PC, let me try that again. On PC, there is you wanting to... this is one of those things that doesn't read properly, I guess. If he said it, it would probably make more sense, but here's what he said. On PC, there is you wanting to declare something a success or a bomb by the internet culture that loves to just observe things. But it's like, guys, you know the small bit of players that we have, we're going to continue to iterate and engage. As we issue content drops, maybe there's going to be sales or potential free weekends down the line, continuing to fluff up that CCU up, which is concurrent users. We need to do what we... This is so fucking hard to read because it's just him talking. We need to do what we can to let people know that this is a really sweaty palm type of experience that can hopefully lend itself to esports, but I have to keep this game alive first and foremost. I can be very cocky and very brash on social media, and realizing we have a fledgling player base, it's been very humbling for me. I'm going to continue to iterate on the game, continue to add to it, and try to be less of a dick, honestly. The problem with what we were trying to pull off with this company and this title was shipping a quality product with a team of 65 people without ruining everybody's marriages. Those of you who have been kind enough to drop $30 on this, we've got your back, and we're sticking with it, end quote. And the reason I put this in here, I guess I should preface, I've followed Cliff Blazinski for years. Everyone has. If you follow the video game industry, he pops up from time to time. And just being honest, I don't know if I would actually like Cliff Blazinski as a person if I met him. I don't know if me and him would ever get along because he seems pretty arrogant. He has some really weird things from his past that I don't want to get into. And I'll say I was extremely skeptical of Lawbreakers. But I played that game and I really, really liked it. Now, not everything was great. They had a robot that made movie quotes, which was awful, but that game delivered a sense of style, of Twitch shooting that was incredibly polished. And when you look at that game and you find out that 65 people worked on that, I don't honestly know how they did that. I don't know how that's possible without everyone in that team working as hard as they can day in and day out, including Cliff Blazinski. And yet, there was this feeling before it came out, and I'm not sure how to put it, but it was almost like a celebration of failure. And once this Slam video came out, it really caught on. And I'll just say, if you haven't seen the video, you can look it up. It's about Cliff Blazinski, and it makes fun of him. It was one of the worst videos I've ever seen. It was just a bullshit hit job with cheap edits. Like, anyone can do this. I can do that. I can make a developer look like an absolute liar and asshole with Adobe Premiere. I can keyframe scale animations and add VSTs to slow down his vocals and make him sound like a moron. Repeat it 3 times, jump cut to make it look like he's an asshole. It's super easy. It's super easy because you're essentially designing something that interrupts someone mid thought. You know what I mean? It's bullshit. If you've got an afternoon free, I can actually show you how to make those videos. Doesn't take talent. They're really easy to do. And like I said, I don't think I would like Cliff Blazinski. And there have been plenty of times on this show when I predicted the game's failure. But I was predicting the game's failure because I thought the game would fail. Not because I didn't like the people making it. But if you claim to like video games, right? If you claim to be a hardcore gamer or whatever, and you have malice against people who make games, get the fuck out. Like, take your annual spending habits and go to the movies or something. Because video games don't need you. Get the fuck out. Because it's one thing to knock a game. Games can be shit. Games can be broken. Games can be busted. But they're fucking hard to make. And even if you don't like the director or you don't like the developer or anything like that, they've got a whole team that's underneath them that you've never heard of that are just working as hard as they can to make something to entertain you. Now, failures are gonna happen, right? That's business. But having a desire to see something fail and then just mocking the people that made it, I don't understand it, man. I really don't understand that attitude. So I would recommend reading this interview because it's just like, I don't know. It seems bizarre making fun of someone for making a video game that didn't sell well. He was also cocky, but weird. Okay, moving on. ashes to ashes, dust to dust, Microsoft has announced they'll be shutting down the old Xbox Live indie game service. If you're not familiar with this division was launched back in the fair weather days of 2006 and served as a platform for small developers to showcase their work. This was well before the indie game boom later on that decade, and in many ways it served more as an oddity than a real special platform, especially when the most famous indie titles that generation totally skipped the Xbox Live indie game section and instead launched on the standard Xbox Live, or even were featured in the Xbox Live games of summer, whatever they call that, Summer of Live, Summer of Arcade, whatever. There were, of course, some highlights. There was that quirky I made a game with zombies in it. That was a twin-stick shooter. Its graphics were really bad, even well below the standard of the time, but it had a complete soundtrack of a band rocking out and even singing the title of the game. It was cool. Now, to be clear, this is only the end of the Xbox 360 service, as ID at Xbox continues to cultivate and support independent developers, so relax there. They're not ending indie support. It's sad to see this go in some ways, but in reality, it never had a purpose. It never had a purpose. If anything, instead of helping independent developers, it probably resulted in the creation of more independent games that wouldn't have existed without the service. So I guess you kind of have to add that to its notch, like, hey, good job right there. But yeah, it's the Xbox 360. It's a 12-year-old console. No one's really seeking out these super old, super janky games, but thanks for the memories. It's going to be closing in the near future. You can still buy all the games if you want to. But anyway, moving on. Hey, remember that awful Bethesda Creators Club we talked about a couple weeks back? Well, what if I told you there was another service nearly identical to the Creators Club, one that also took place in a game that was incredibly popular with modders, and yet made the transition to paid mods without huge public freakouts? How? Well, because they kept mentioning where the money was going. To modders. Don't believe me? Well, Minecraft Marketplace has already reached $1 million in revenue in less than 3 months after it launched. It's true. Now, on the official blog, Microsoft explained their clear and concise approach to the Minecraft Marketplace. That could possibly help out another struggling publisher and developer. Not gonna name names! Here's what they said. Quote, "The program offers our players a wide variety of community-created content that they can safely and easily access, and while also allowing the community to support one another's work and allow creators to the chance to turn their creativity into a way of making a living." End quote. What an incredible idea. So what's the DLC that they're selling? Skins? Just skins. Oh, and I know. Some people watching this might say, big deal. Minecraft is just a bunch of children. That's all that play that. They'll buy anything. Well, okay. Well, let me tell you, video game culture will complain about anything. So let me ask you, did you hear about the recent Minecraft Marketplace controversy? Do you recall the slanderous YouTube videos, the numerous Reddit memes, the boycotting hashtags on Twitter? Do you remember any of this? No, you don't, because Minecraft Marketplace was launched without incident or backlash and just made over $1 million in less than 3 months because Microsoft knew what the fuck they were doing. Bethesda, pay attention to this. Be as transparent as possible, or at least know how to spin it. Anyway, moving on. And lastly, before we move on to the charts, some sad news. Kaz Hirai will retire next year. Oh, I know what you're thinking. The CEO of Sony is retiring? No, not that Kaz Hirai. The fake Kaz Hirai on Twitter. Yes, the Twitter account will be retiring after next year's E3. The account was started way back in 2011 and has been receiving a surprising amount of attention from within the video game industry for a parody account. The majority of its jokes center around bold-face exaggerations, which was the reputation given to the real Kaz Hirai after he excitedly declared the PlayStation 1 game Ridge Racer would be coming to the PSP. If you don't remember it, it's hard to explain, but Ridge Racer! So if you've never followed that account, it's really funny. Go check it out. This is tangentially related to business, so please go check it out. It's CEO Kaz Hirai on Twitter. And enjoy it while you can, because it's not going to last long. Okay, here we go. we have the NPDs for the month of August. These are the best-selling games in North America for the month of August. But before we get to that, a bit of context. The NPD reports that hardware sales for the month, for the year so far, I should say, are up 17% compared to 2016. This is likely due to the introduction of the Nintendo Switch because the Wii U didn't really sell anything. Hardware sales for the month of August, however, were down 6%, only reaching $168 million. Apparently, the Xbox One didn't fare as well this month as it did the year before in August. And if you remember correctly, the Xbox One actually won the month of August. It actually outpaced the PlayStation 4 last year. But I guess times are changing because it is now the Nintendo Switch's time, because the Nintendo Switch took the top spot for the month of August. Because of course it did. Demand hasn't even been remotely reached. But here are the 10 best-selling games for the month of August in North America. Here we go. Number 10 was Overwatch. Number 9 was Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. Number 8 was Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered. Number 7 was Mario Kart 8. Number 6 was Rainbow Six Siege. Number 5 was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Number 4 was Splatoon 2. Number 3 was Uncharted The Lost Legacy. Number 2 was Grand Theft Auto 5. Yes, really. And number 1 was Madden NFL 18. So Splatoon 2, last month's winner, is now down to 4th place. Still really good for a Switch exclusive. Now, I was on Twitter and I saw someone say that the NPD doesn't count the final 3 days of the month. I've never heard that before, but if true, that would explain why Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle is absent from the list. Speaking of absent, did you notice any major retail releases missing from that top 10 list? Oh, that's right. Agents of Mayhem placed 16th in its debut month. Oh, it's brutal. It's brutal. Which, of course, is that sort of pseudo spin-off sequel something to Saints Row. It looks super generic, and the reviews have not been positive. But 16th for your debut month, that's a dud. That's a bomb. That's real bad. That's really, really bad. Now, some people are dumbfounded that Grand Theft Auto 5 continues to be on the charts, especially second place for the month of August. But is this really that big of a deal? These sorts of games have always existed. Remember Wii Fit? That was like in the top 5 for, oh God, it was like 2-3 years, 4 years almost. That just kept on going. That was back in the days when we actually had sales numbers too, and man, they sold a lot of Wii Fit copies. Plus, I think this has a lot to do with new console sales. Like, if you're the dude behind the counter at Best Buy or GameStop and some dude asks you, I'm buying a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, what game should I get with my brand new console? And the monocle falls out of their eyes or whatever. You're probably going to recommend, Grand Theft Auto 5, because everybody likes Grand Theft Auto. That's how it works. Anyway, let's move on to the cursed land known as the UK, because I've got the 10 best-selling games for the week over there. Number 10 was Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Number 9 was Number 9 was Doom. Number 8 was Dishonored 2. Number 7 was F1 2017. Number 6 was Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. Number 5 was Fallout 4. Number 4 was Grand Theft Auto 4. Number 3 was Forza 3. Ooh, I like that. Oof, my OCD right here. Number 5 was Fallout 4. And then number 4 was Grand Theft Auto 5. Oh, so close. Number 3 was, of course, Forza Horizon 3, so everything worked out there. Number 2 was Uncharted The Lost Legacy, and number 1 was Destiny 2. So Mario Cross Rabbids dropped from 2nd place to 10th place. That's kind of an odd sign. Maybe they didn't have as many consoles available to sell this week. I don't know. Also, it's worth pointing out that 4 of the 10 games weren't released in 2017. Kind of odd. Anyway, now let's go over to the Japanese charts for the week. But before we do, I do want to mention that so far this year, physical games in Japan are up 82.5% year on year. So physical games are still doing great in Japan, better than they have been in recent history, but still not as good as they were back in the turn of the century. But hey, this is all thanks probably to Dragon Quest, because goddamn, Dragon Quest is selling a bazillion copies. So here are the 10 best-selling games over in Japan for the week. Number 10 was Konosuba, God's Blessing on This Wonderful World, Judgment on This Greedy Game. For the PlayStation 4, whatever that means. Number 9 was The Snack World Tajaras on the 3DS. Number 8 was Dragon Quest XI, Echoes of the Elusive Age on the PlayStation 4. Number 7 was, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Number 6 was Monster Hunter Double Cross Nintendo Switch version, so for the Nintendo Switch. Number 5 was Dragon Quest XI, Echoes of the Elusive Age on the 3DS. Number 4 was Everybody's Golf on the PlayStation 4. Number 3 was Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 for the Nintendo Switch. God damn it, Japan. Don't buy that crap. Number 2 was Splatoon 2 on the Nintendo Switch. And number 1 was Destiny 2 on the PlayStation 4, selling over 50,000 copies, which is just, it's just, you know, it hasn't been true in a long time, but it's just always weird to see a first-person shooter at the top spot. Obviously, Battlefield 1 also does very well over in Japan. Destiny 2, I'll say, it feels like a Japanese game. Every enemy type has a secret to them. There's a secret weakness that you can capitalize on. So while you're leveling up, the more important thing is smart play, and that just reminds me very much of a Japanese action RPG. So good on Destiny 2. It's a really fun game. If you're on the fence and you're like, I don't care, I'm not gonna buy that game. Think about it. It's a fun game. Check it out. But what are the best-selling consoles over in Japan? Well, I've got that list right here. Starting off with the Nintendo Switch with 45,439, PlayStation 4 with 18,483, PlayStation 4 Pro with 10,999. That's actually really high for the PlayStation 4 Pro. Even the week before, they only sold around 5,000. That's more than double it, actually. Then there was the new 3DS LL with 9,628, new 2DS LL with 9,403, PlayStation Vita with 3,913, 2DS with 1,772, new 3DS with 331, PlayStation 3 with 115, Wii U with 90, and in last place for the 8th week in a row, it's the Xbox One with 63. You'd think Destiny would help it out, but nope. But that's going to have to do it for the Chart Park, the land where money grows on trees. We've now come to the final segment of the show. This is the part of the show where we talk about what happened 10 years ago and beyond and find out if there's anything worth talking about. Then there usually is. It's a little something we like to call strong history. Okay. All right, real talk. There are a lot of games we've been talking about recently that are on this list, so I'm going to just give you a little something for each of them, but not go too deep. That's right. It's quantity over quality. Woohoo! 11 years ago, on the PlayStation 2, Okami was released. Now, this is often regarded as one of the most underrated games, and yes, it's getting a re-release later this year, but here's a fun fact. It was only the second new IP ever produced by Platinum Games. Now, while that studio was certainly celebrated during its brief 3-year run, 4 of its 6 games were actually related to Beautiful Joe, which is kind of weird. While the other 2 were Okami and God Hand, both were released in 2006, the same year Platinum Games would close. But that's okay because they helped another studio get off the ground, which is sure you know what I'm talking about, don't you? Don't you? Okay, let's move on. Also 11 years ago on the Xbox 360, the Godfather game was released. Now, taking a movie licensed game based off a 30-year-old movie is already kind of risky, right? Now imagine one of the most beloved cinematic classics of the 20th century. That makes it a little more risky, but that's exactly what EA Games, Electronic Arts, did when they created the Godfather game. But in an effort to mask their awkward cash-in, they brought in a bunch of the original cast, including Robert Duvall, James Caan, and the universally celebrated actor Marlon fucking Brando. Yes, really. They all lended their voices to this video game. Now, unfortunately for EA, Brando's health had seen a significant decline, and allegedly none of his voice work was ever used in the game because of the pronounced sound of an oxygen tank in the background. I told you he wasn't in good health. Worse yet, this turned out to be Brando's final acting role before his death in 2004. So for the record, the final role for Marlon Brando, maybe the most respected actor of his generation, was for Godfather the game, and they couldn't even use any of it. Okay. Personally speaking, though, I liked the game. I smashed up people's clubs until the extortion meter went up. It was fun. 12 years ago, on the PlayStation 2, Marvel Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects was launched. Now, when it was announced EA was working on a 3D Marvel fighting game, the concept itself was generally well received. I mean, after all, Marvel vs. Capcom had been awesome. So if they just took that and made it 3D, it'd be equally good, right? Instead, Nihilist Software, the developers, produced a dark and gritty, though good-looking brawler that came off as clunky and repetitive. You could play as Wolverine, Spider-Man, some guy that had electricity powers. He wasn't a Marvel character. He looked like, I don't know, he fell through an Ace Hardware. But funny enough, Nihilist Software has always been producing games that were exciting in theory, but lacked something in execution. After Marvel, they went on to make Conan for the PlayStation 3 and 360, which was a ho-hum adaptation of the pulp and film franchise. Then later, they would work on Resistance Burning Skies, really good franchise on the PlayStation 3. An admirable attempt at a first-person shooter on the Vita, but once again, it just lacked something. And lastly, they made the abysmal Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified, which is arguably one of the worst games on the Vita, and potentially killed the Vita in the West. Once people knew that the Call of Duty game was bad, it hurt them really bad. But the strangest fact about Nihilist is that there's one game they didn't finish. StarCraft Ghost. Perhaps there's a reason we never saw the game get released. That's crazy. Anyway, 13 years ago on the GameCube and the PlayStation 2, Def Jam Fight for New York was released. I refuse to call this game a guilty pleasure because it is a proud pleasure, an absolute masterpiece that's never been replicated. And this isn't any sort of ironic appreciation. This game totally kicked ass. Now imagine a Fight Club mixed with a circa 2004 rap video. Actually, that sounds terrible, but just imagine it wasn't terrible. Imagine Fat Joe throwing Henry Rollins in front of a subway train, killing him. Imagine Flavor Flav and Snoop Dogg duking it out in a burning building. Now imagine it was made by Aki, the same team behind WCW, NWO Revenge, WrestleMania 2000, and No Mercy. Well, let me tell you, friends, you don't have to imagine. It's out there, and it is great. Seriously, an awesome game. Also, that same week on the PlayStation 2, Blood Will Tell. Okay, Blood Will Tell. Picture this. It's feudal Japan. You're some guy. You have fake body parts. Why do you have fake body parts? Because some, demon type creature things stole your body parts. But the good news is, you've replaced your arms with swords. And now you're gonna go track down those body parts and somehow just put them back in. Does that make any sense? No. Is it awesome? Yes. It's Blood Will Tell. But let's focus on the developer, Red Entertainment, because I've never really looked into them. And they have contributed to an insane number of cult classics. Like games that I've always heard of. And it's bizarre to know it came from one studio. First off, they created Sakura Wars. It was a visual novel series that was so popular it spun out into a popular anime. There are people that like Sakura Wars that have no idea it was based off of what Red Entertainment made. It was a visual novel. How crazy is that? Then they went to work on the 3D, the 32X, I almost said the 3DO, the 32X, the Genesis add-on, and they made Tempo, which was that oddly memorable platformer that was centered around music. Then they went on to produce the cult classic PlayStation 1 JRPG Thousand Arms. Then they made a Japanese original Xbox exclusive. Yes, really, those existed. And this game was called Nude. NUDE, which stood for Natural Ultimate Digital Experiment. It came with a microphone. It was kind of like Seaman, and you taught a robotic maid the name of cleaning objects, like duster, rag, vacuum. But this is all in Japanese. Look up the game. It's incredibly bizarre. Then they went on to make the cult classic Gungrave series, which of course also became an anime. Then they attempted to make an MMO out of the anime series Trigun, which sadly failed. Then they made Blood Will Tell and a bunch of other stuff. And now, right now, they are aiding in development of the Fire Emblem series. In fact, they've worked on Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem Fates, and Fire Emblem Echoes from earlier this year. Red Entertainment just makes cult classic games. And they never get credit. It's insane. So, think about that. It's incredibly bizarre to me. The people that worked on Gungrave are also working on Fire Emblem, that also created Sakura Wars. They also made Nude. Way too bizarre. Way too bizarre. Anyway, also that same week, on the PlayStation 2, Dance Dance Revolution Extreme was released. I like Dance Dance Revolution. It was fun. It was a rhythm game where you danced and it was fun. It was a good time. But here's why I'm bringing this up. It was released in 2004, right? Okay, big deal. Released in 2004. Well, 2 years later, in 2006, Burger King just started a promotion on its website that was connected to Dance Dance Revolution Extreme, and if you played a minigame on their website, it unlocked a secret code that unlocked a hidden game, or unlocked a hidden song in the 2-year-old game. Burger King was giving out cheat codes to this old game, and this was before DLC, so this song just sat there and waited for 2 years before Burger King released the secret. What a absolute weird time to be alive. Also that same week, Katamari Damacy was released. Now, if you ever needed proof on how powerful the PlayStation 2 was, this game is it. And I'm not talking about graphically, I'm talking about in terms of sales, because nearly everything sold on the PlayStation 2 so well that they would take games that would otherwise never see American release or Western release, and they would bring them over to America. And that's how we got Katamari Damacy, which is an incredibly weird game. It tells the story of the king of the cosmos who, he gets drunk one night, He's drunk driving and he smashes all these stars out of the sky. So he asks his son to use a ball that rolls up objects so that they can get turned into stars. And it starts off really small with like paper clips, pencils, things like that. And then it ends with entire buildings and pets and people. It's really disturbing. Now, somehow this quirky idea caught on and it had 11 spin-offs and sequels. More of these games were released, on handhelds though. I think the most recent one was last year and it was on iPhone. I don't know. But Katamari Damacy, totally bonkers. Also, that same week, on the GameCube and PlayStation 2, Mega Man X Command Mission was released. Now, is there anything to say about this really bizarre JRPG that has Mega Man in it? No. Also, that same week, on the PlayStation 2, Monster Hunter, the very first Monster Hunter, was released. I actually rented this game when it came out, specifically because I saw a trailer for it, and I saw the animation of what it looked like when you cook food, and I thought that looked cool, so I rented it, and I played it, and I thought it was pretty good. It was alright. It was good. It was fun. It was a weird time for the PlayStation 2. I was like, okay, cool. This is nice. Looking forward to next generation. But honestly, this game proves that the PlayStation 2 wasn't all that powerful. Yes, I know what I said earlier, but nope. I'm gonna redact that. I'm gonna redact that statement because when this was released in Japan, hardly anybody cared. Then it was released in America. Likewise, hardly anybody cared. But when the franchise made the jump to the PSP, it slowly began attracting a fan base in Japan. This game really proves the power of the PSP. Sometimes it's not just the game, sometimes it is the platform. Think about that. That's one to grow on. 14 years ago, on the PC, the personal computer, Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy was released. Now, here's a fun fact about the Jedi Knight series. It sucks. They all suck, except for Jedi Academy, which is actually the fourth entry in the Dark Forces series. But forget that for a moment. While all the other games were painfully dated, having players hunt down colored key cards? What is this, 1992? Blah! Jedi Academy actually had a budget to build new environments, and this allowed players to push forward through these action-packed stages. Kind of like Mega Man, pick whatever stage you want and go right through it. You're gonna be on top of a train, shooting electricity out of your hand, using Jedi Force to push people off of a train while there's a giant thunderstorm going on. It is bad. The fuck, God, that game is good. Anyway, this is a pretty good game. Also, 15 years ago, on the PlayStation 2, Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus was released on the PlayStation 2. Now, some people love Jak and Daxter, others love Ratchet and Clank, but personally, my favorite on the PlayStation 2 when it comes to platformers is the very first Sly Cooper. It's a classic linear adventure, but it also has this unique storytelling and it has incredible cel-shaded graphics. Not to mention, it has good stealth. Not many games have good stealth, let alone platformers, so that game is good. I don't know if it's quite as good as Jedi Academy, when you're just running on stage, you got your lightsaber and you just start cutting people down. God, Jedi Academy's good. I hope that game holds up, because I'm kind of overhyping it now. Also, that same week, on the GameCube, Star Fox Adventures was released. Now, it has been said many times, Rare's move to Microsoft was simply made for fiscal reasons. Despite keeping the Nintendo 64 sales alive in the West, Nintendo didn't see any sort of reason to increase funding for future Rare titles. Now, Rare was slightly confused by this. They're like, hey, Nintendo, do you want to buy us out? And Nintendo's like, no, we're good. No, we're good. That's okay. And over the years, Nintendo had actually interfered with a lot of Rare's ideas for the worse. For the worse. Like, there was a point where Nintendo actually canceled GoldenEye. And Rare had to convince them, no, GoldenEye will be a success. And Nintendo's like, all right, fine. And then it was a success. I'm not saying Rare can do no wrong, but whenever Nintendo interfered, it was always for the worst. But the most egregious example of Nintendo interference has to be for Dinosaur Planet. Starting back in 1999, Rare spent years working on this highly original project. It was neither a first-person shooter like Perfect Dark, nor was it a platformer like Banjo-Kazooie, and it had a brand new cast of characters. Well, that was the idea, at least, before Shigeru Miyamoto took a look at the project and said, oh, this should be a Star Fox game. Add Star Fox in here. Now, this apparently upset a good portion of the team, because they've been working on this for years, and then suddenly Miyamoto's like, you know what? You should change the story. Make this a Star Fox game. What? What the fuck? And so the entire story was rewritten to incorporate the Dinosaur Planet into the pre-established universe of Star Fox. Now, years down the line, former Rare employees have said that the changes were eventually accepted. But considering that this game was released in Australia, which was the very first location it was released, 9 days before Microsoft purchased Rare for $375 million, making this the last game that would ever be released on a Nintendo console, not handheld, but on a Nintendo console by Rare. I think that timing is a little suspect. Not to mention Rare's headquarters over in England, right? It has a bunch of old knickknacks that they have displayed. And one of them that is still prominently featured is a statue of the original protagonist of Dinosaur Island riding on top of a dinosaur. It's a passion project that they can't claim ownership to because Shigeru Miyamoto wanted Star Fox in it. Yikes. 17 years ago, on the PlayStation, RPG Maker was released. I remember being so hyped for this. It was a game where you could actually make your own RPG. And I thought, I'm going to make the next Final Fantasy, and then I realized I needed to type in all the dialogue with the controller, so I went, nah, I'm good. Never mind. Also, it took up a whole memory card. I spent like an afternoon with it. Anyway, all that exact same week on the PlayStation, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 was released. Now, we talked about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 a couple of weeks ago, and honestly, there's not much to say here. But I will say that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 is my personal favorite in the franchise. After all, it does have Millencolins No Cigar. And who doesn't love Swedish pop music? I know I do. Also that same week, Austin Powers, Welcome to My Underground Lair was released on the Game Boy Color. Why are we talking about this game? It's an Austin Powers licensed game for the Game Boy Color? Well, I'll tell you why. Guess who made this? If you already know the answer, it's not guessing. But if you don't know the answer, guess who made this? Guess who made this? You're never going to get the answer. You know why? Because it's Rockstar fucking Games. That's right. The makers of Grand Theft Auto made 2 terrible Austin Power games on the Game Boy Color. Well, technically it was Rockstar Lincoln Limited. They're the ones that made them, but they're still part of Rockstar. Which, by the way, take a look at Rockstar Lincoln Limited. They have like a piss yellow Rockstar logo. That has to be a dig, right? I don't know. 19 years ago on the PlayStation in Japan, Bishibashi Special was released on the PlayStation. This is basically WarioWare before WarioWare. It was awesome. It was incredibly bizarre. It was just a collection of mini games. I can't do it justice. Go Google it. You'll really like it. And 20 years ago on the PlayStation, Oddworld Abe's Odyssey was released. Now, a lot of people will tell you that the PlayStation 1 was a 3D console, and it undeniably was. But between the Saturn's premature death in the West and the Nintendo 64 going full 3D, the PlayStation 1 was the only console to feature exciting new 2D games in North America. Obviously, Castlevania Symphony of the Night is a top candidate, but right next to it would have to be Oddworld Abe's Odyssey. Now, this was created in the vein of Another World, or Flashback, or for you younger viewers, Limbo and Inside. Odyssey told the story of Abe, a simple janitor on an alien planet in an alien galaxy, which is full of aliens, who discovers that his enslaved species were going to be turned into snack foods by their conglomerate overlords. Now, fortunately for Abe, his mystical powers were allowing him to set his brothers free and revive the nearly extinct species on the planet, even if those species wanted to kill Abe. Now, there are plenty of really fun games on the PlayStation 1, but it is obvious that Odyssey had something to say about the world, like the real world. Like, it was an allegory in many ways. And sadly, even though it had something to say, it never really got a chance to finish its thoughts. See, it was supposed to be part of a 5-game series that would expand the entire Odd world. Odyssey was going to start it off, and then it was going to be Munch's Odyssey, and then the rest of the games were going to be released, but they're kind of shrouded in mystery beyond their titles. And all those other remakes and spin-offs and sequels, apparently they don't fit into the final story. So Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, that's not part of the main franchise. But still, Oddworld Inhabitants, 20 years later, they're still pushing forward, with Lauren Lanning, the director of the game, hinting at some big surprises to come later this month. So look forward to them. The Oddworld series is pretty badass. And finally, 21 years ago, on the PlayStation in Japan, Persona was released. I just wanted to put this here to clear up one thing. It is not Shin Megami Tensei Persona, it is just Persona. They called it Shin Megami Tensei Persona here in America because they thought the name Persona would turn Westerners off. But adding a bunch of random Japanese before that was a good marketing move for America. Whatever. But over in Japan, it has always been just Persona. Okay? Good. Now that's gonna have to do it for Strong History. Good show, but let's wrap it up. We actually, this has been a long one, so we're going to close out right now. Let's close up the show. What's going to be going on this week? I don't really know. Probably nothing. Just come back next week for the PRESSURECAST. That's really the whole show. This is just, wow, we are going way, the recording time is nearly 2 hours right now, so I'm just going to close up the show. How can we wrap this one up? Well, the episode is ending. Much like Marlon Brando, who died after making the Godfather game. But the Pressure Cast will never die, because the Pressure Cast is forever. Okay, see you guys.